Gary Parrish, welcome back. CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to that like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, please also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. We've been sprinkling in conference previews over the past few weeks. We've already done the 5 power conferences: ACC, Big 12, Big East, Big 10, SEC. So now we're going to turn our attention to the best of the rest, which translates to a conversation about the teams expected to be the best among those who do not call a power conference home. Unsurprisingly, Gonzaga is expected to top the list. The Zags are 6th in the AP poll, 7th in the coaches poll, 8th in my top 25 and 1, 9th in Norlander's top 101. Norlander, I think I remember, correct me if I'm wrong. You're always welcome to correct me if I'm wrong. But I think I remember, and you're always welcome to correct me if I'm wrong. But what I think I remember, what I believe I remember is you once proclaiming that Gonzaga's national title window under Mark Few had closed. Do you still feel that way? Do you stand?
Did I proclaim it?
I think you proclaimed that.
Or did I postulate it?
I think you proclaimed. And I want to ask you, 2 days before Halloween, in the year of our Lord 2024, do you still believe? Did you stand by that?
Did I proclaim it? Did I postulate it?
I think
you
presumed it.
I don't think I proclaimed it. However, I did write a column.
I think you proclaimed it. I think you planted a flag
that wondered in an editorial form of the written word if Gonzaga not winning a title back in 2022 or something like that, if maybe the window had closed. I don't think it has. I tell you what, Gonzaga.
Hey, that's news to me.
It's not news to Evan Mia. Gonzaga is 9th at KenPom, 8th at Torvik, 2nd at evanmia.com. So obviously, as is usually the case, and really has been the case almost every season, 20 years running, Gonzaga is the best team outside of the power conference structure. That is the case again. I think heading into the season, it is fair to call Gonzaga a national championship contender. I would qualify that specific designation, GP. If you're sitting in the top 10 of more rankings, more whether human or computer than not, if you're a top 10 team designation, I think you can be evaluated as a national title contender. Gonzaga obviously clearly covers that and clears that bar. It is far and away the most well-positioned team outside of the power conference structure. We're going to get to a whole bunch of them, but Gonzaga obviously needs to lead the show because it's the best team. And still the best team despite losing Steele Venters, who I've been waiting to see play for this team for 2 years. But he has an Achilles tear, so he's going to miss a season again after having the ACL tear. Even without that, I do think Gonzaga is going to have one of the best offenses in the country, which it has reliably top 5 level almost every single season for much of the past decade under Mark Few. I think this will be the 18th straight season that Gonzaga hits at least 25 wins. I think you're going to see a big jump from Graham Ike, who was good last season, but I think Graham Ike is going to be one of the 4 or 5 most productive big men in the country. He averaged 16.5 points and 7.5 rebounds last season. I think those numbers will increase. I think they'll increase in part because Ryan Nembhard is also an All-American candidate, and he's a senior, a veteran player who averaged 15 and 7. Those two are the centerpieces. But I'll note that they still have Nolan Hickman, who is he's developed a nice career. He entered Gonzaga with, I think, from at least a fan expectation, pretty lofty expectations of what he would be. And instead, he has turned into just a solid college player. And he had his best season last season. Ben Gregg is going to take a big jump up. But they bring in Michael Ajayi from Pepperdine. Could be the kind. I think he has a chance to really surprise a lot of folks who just, unless you're a Gonzaga fan and you're understandably not dialed in on the portal and guys transferring out of Pepperdine, he has a shot maybe to be one of the guys in the first 2-3 weeks of the season. Hell, maybe the first night of the season. They're going to play Baylor less than a week. We are less than a week out, folks, by the way. He could be a guy who really emerges as a big time threat. Got to see it happen though. And then they've got Caleb Battle, who's on his 4th school in 4 years after being at Arkansas last season. I like Gonzaga a lot. I think they're a top 10 team. They've got a challenging schedule. They get it going right away against Baylor. I love to see that. But yeah, I would not say the window has closed, but
You mean you wouldn't say it again? Because you've already
I
said it
wouldn't.
once. You
I
wouldn't say
wouldn't
it
say it
again.
again. Not
Okay,
yet.
good.
Give me a couple. Give me a couple more weeks.
I got you. I got an email from a fella. Tell me what you think of this. So his point was, hey, Mark Sears is awesome. Nate Oates is awesome, but Alabama wasn't awesome last season. Alabama went to the Final Four last season, but they also lost 12 times. They had 11 losses on Selection Sunday. Yeah, they were top 15 at KenPom all season, but the resume wasn't great. That's how they got a four. That's why they got a 4 seed. He suggested this feels a little bit like North Carolina a couple years ago. Like they weren't great most of the season, or at least didn't have a great resume most of the season. Got hot in the tournament, went deep, and then brought a lot of people back, and then everybody ranked them really high, and you know how that story unfolded. I bring Alabama up not to talk about it here because we've talked about the SEC in Alabama. Gonzaga is sort of similar. They got a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, made the Sweet 16. That's where they lost to Purdue. But they didn't. The Zags didn't win their league. They didn't win their league tournament. And we were talking. It was pretty deep into the calendar. I think February.
Yeah.
We were like, are they going to get a quad 1 win? When are they going to get one?
I think you said their window had closed at that point.
I thought that was you. And if those words came out of my mouth, I was just quoting you. Okay. Probably. Yeah. Is there any validity to that argument? Gonzaga wasn't great for much of last season. So stop thinking they're going to be great this season. Do you buy that at all?
No. Although that was more of a function. Yeah. So I get what you're bringing back to the table here, because they had dropped a lot of important opportunities, and it was a genuine curiosity once they had lost to St. Mary's in the first game between those teams. They had that. Remember, they had the game against Kentucky in February, which was a godsend in terms of a non-conference opportunity that deep into the season, and that really propelled them to where they didn't lose again until they lost to St. Mary's in the WCC championship game, which set them up obviously for a 5 seed. I don't expect that scenario to play out again with Gonzaga this season. I think they're gonna pick off a couple of big wins in non-con play and not be sitting there with some uncertainty. But certainly there was more shakiness with their prospects last season. Going in, but I actually think this team's got a chance to be slightly better than the one last year that finished 12th at KenPom.
The Zags have made, as you know, 25 straight NCAA tournaments. Mark Few has never not coached in an NCAA tournament since he's been a head coach. The streaks are now Kansas at 33, Michigan State at 26, Zags at 25, Duke at 24. Those are the top 4. Before we move on, I just was thinking about this earlier. Which of those streaks gets snapped first?
Can't see Kansas. It's hard to see that. Michigan.
The only way it would be Kansas is like that's a league where you're 2 injuries away from finishing 11th.
Yeah, I know, but even still, it's Kansas.
That's right. I hear you. Yeah.
Michigan State flirted with this, but didn't make the first 4. In recent history. I feel like the answer is it basically is who's going to retire first, Tom Izzo or Mark Few, and then you have your answer for what's more likely.
Who do you think will retire first? I don't know.
That's a great question. I will say Izzo retires first. So mark me down for Michigan State in that one. That's purely a guess, but I will guess that Izzo is the first to retire between those two.
I would say it's either Kansas or Michigan State, just because those leagues have so much depth that if you just get an injury, and I know it hasn't happened in a quarter of a century. Correct. I got it. I understand. I don't think any of these schools are ever missing the NCAA tournament ever for the rest of my life. But if we got to pick one, I would just go with the strongest leagues. And that's the Big 12 and the Big 10, as opposed to the WCC, New Pac-12, and or the ACC. I just go with the toughest leagues and just you miss on. And here's the thing: you don't really miss on recruits anymore because it's just you're buying them. So it's not really like if you miss on this guy, you just that those both of those programs have money, so it'll have to be injury stuff. Probably they'll always have teams on paper that look like they're going to be NCAA tournament teams, and then you get a couple of injuries, and those leagues have so many good teams. Like I think the Big 12 has more, at least in this season, championship contenders than the Big 10. Maybe 5 more than anybody in the Big 10. But the Big 10 has like real depth. And I could see any team in that league enduring a couple of injuries and then really slipping deep down the standings. And you look up and you're 4 games under 500 in your league and you don't know how to get out of it.
A reminder, this is a best of the rest preview, so let's continue on with the mid-majors that we need to discuss, although it is a very good thought experiment here. Here's the deal. Top 80 at KenPom, Torvik, evanmia.com. The teams outside the power conference structure, Evan Mia has 15 in his top 80. KenPom has 14 non-high major conference schools. Torvik has 13. Now, Evan Mia only has 1 team in his top 40, and it's Gonzaga at 2. Torvik only has 3 in his top 50. And then 10 more make up the back 30 spots there. We talked about Gonzaga. Let's go to the next 4 in line by average placement overall. St. Mary's is second. And this in terms of average ranking across those 3 metrics. St. Mary's, then Dayton, then VCU, then Memphis. I'll be quick on this, but here's some heads up on these, and then GP can take it where he wants to. St. Mary's, clearly still the number 2 in the WCC. I'm not convinced it'll wind up being the second best team from a non-high major this season, but a very good chance it's going to be in that top 5 conversation there. Aiden Mahaney's gone. Alex Dukas graduated. Josh Jefferson left in the portal. But Mitchell Saxon's still there, and he's an important big man. He's a good big man. Harry Wessels, a 7-1 defensive force. They're still going to be respectable on the defensive end. And then they've got a point guard, Augustus Marshall-Leonis, who was pretty damn valuable last season and was more valuable, in my opinion, than Mahaney, who took a dip as a sophomore. And Mahaney was more of a scoring guard than a point guard, which is what Augustus is. So I do like St. Mary's to make the tournament again. They're 34th at KenPom, 40th at Torvik, 47th at Evan Mia. Dayton is 27th at KenPom. Kind of across the board here. So I've got Dayton also in that top 30-ish conversation. That's where they're in KenPom. They're 44th at Evan Mia and 69th at Torvik heading into the season. Anthony Grant has won 135 games the last 6 seasons. The Dayton has become by far the most consistent and reliable team in the Atlantic 10. They were a 7 seed in last year's tournament. They beat Nevada in the first round. They don't have Deron Holmes the second anymore. He's off to the NBA, but Malachi Smith is back after a big injury. Nate Santos was a preseason all-league guy. Enoch Cheeks is back. And they bring in like Zed Key from Ohio State and Posh Alexander, who's using his final year of eligibility. They have good players. VCU, who we're going to get to next year, was the preseason pick. I think Dayton is the best team in the A10. Also has a really good schedule. I will see the Flyers out in Maui in less than a month. VCU is 4th on the overall pecking order, 41st at KenPom, and even Evan Miyakawa's site, 52nd at Torvik. They are the preseason pick in the A10. They were 24-14 last season. Would have made the tournament if they didn't get picked off in the A10 tournament by Duquesne. Of course, they had a great campaign. Did Duquesne? Max Shulga is back, a key returnee. He actually went to Villanova. He committed to Villanova for about 2 weeks in the offseason, then doubled back to VCU for his final season of eligibility. Joe Bamisell, Zeb Jackson are also back there. Good team. Ryan Odom's a really good coach. Kind of a subplot to watch there is if VCU does wind up being the best team in the A10, makes the tournament, Virginia isn't good, Ryan Odom will be on the short list of candidates to take over in Charlottesville if the Cavaliers don't do well without Tony Bennett in their first season. And then Memphis is 5th. They're 32nd at Torvik, 43rd at KenPom, 50th at evanmia.com. They missed the tournament last season. Obviously, it's been continued melodrama there. There's real hot seat. And just talking to a few folks with GP, correct me or confirm if you please. But if Memphis does not get this going in a good way and doesn't make the tournament, I think it's fair to say Penny Hardaway's on the hot seat there. They have Tyrese Hunter from Texas, who's a key transfer. Musa Cisse is coming back for his final. He's a boomerang transfer, started his career there. Dane Danger from Illinois is there. They've got PJ Haggerty, who was one of the more productive players in the country last season that really nobody knew about, averaged 21 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists, and 2 steals a game. They have the talent. I have Memphis in the top 30. If they can get it done on the court, this team should be in the tournament with a lot of room to spare. But let's just open on those four: St. Mary's, Dayton, VCU, Memphis. Any takeaways on any or none?
Yeah, well, let's just continue the Memphis conversation. It's interesting. They've now played 2 exhibitions, North Carolina and Alabama. They lost them both. Both teams were missing players both games. It is what it is. But then they get UConn. You'll be there in Maui.
Yeah.
On the opening day of the Maui tournament. So like in a span of 6 weeks, Memphis is going to play North Carolina, Alabama, and UConn. Like 3, that's 3 top 5 teams in my top 25 and 3 top 10 teams in the AP poll. As for Penny, no coach has at Memphis in my lifetime has been less successful over this amount of time. 2 NCAA tournament appearances, 1 NCAA tournament win. And it's not just that, although that's not good. Memphis fans have spent, in the past few months, not all, but lots, dreaming about getting out of the American. They don't feel like there's any comparable programs to them in the American. And like that is true, by the way, in terms of history, tradition, investment, all that stuff. But Memphis has never won the American. Penny Hardaway's never won the American. And they underachieve more often than they overachieve or even meet expectations. In 2019, Penny's first season, picked 4th, finished 5th. Next year, picked tied for 1st, finished tied for 5th. Next year, picked 2nd, finished 3rd. Next year, picked 2nd, finished 3rd. Next year, picked 2nd, finished 2nd. Next year, picked 2nd, finished tied for 5th. This year, picked 2nd. We'll see. But in 6 seasons with Penny in charge, the Tigers have literally never exceeded expectations in their league. Only met expectations once. And in 5 of the 6 seasons under Penny, they have failed to finish in the league standings where they were expected to finish in the league standings. I say all that to say, if they do that again, I think he's in real trouble come March. The best case scenario for everybody would be he win the league because he has the best roster, win the league, go to the tournament, calm things down around that program, and just like be quiet for a few months. But if that doesn't happen, what I just described, then he could. There could be a coaching change in March. Go back up to the A10, Dayton and VCU.
Mm-hmm.
What can Dayton loses Kobe Elvis to Oklahoma, Kobe Bryant to Kentucky. They did bring in some play. David Cobb's favorite player, Posh Alexander's now there, Zed Key. But I couldn't help as I was going, prepping for this. You look at St. Mary's, they lose Aiden Mahaney. Like I'm worried. How are you? It's always been difficult, I guess, to keep awesome players at schools outside of the traditional power structure. But at least you had, you couldn't openly buy them off campus. You could do it, but you had to be quiet about it. And there was, you couldn't look a young person in the eyes and say, you can come with me and play next season. I 100% guarantee it. It was like, we think we can get you a waiver, but we'll see. There were deterrents to leaving places like Dayton and St. Mary's once you got comfortable at places like Dayton and St. Mary's. And now there's just not. Unless you like really just love it there, or you just don't want to leave or whatever. Every time you get players of these caliber, they are going to get bought off of your campus. And I guess there was never a way to keep up, but we have reached a point where, I don't, and Steph Curry might've been an exception to the rule, but you'll get the point. Like, does Steph Curry ever in this era actually do that many years at a school like Davidson? I don't know. I don't know.
Davidson might be a little bit of a different place. That maybe it's an interesting what if there, because he did his biggest damage essentially the year before he left for the draft. The big run there, he returned to Davidson the next year and had a good season. Don't get me wrong, but his apex was as a sophomore. I'd say that St. Mary's, Dayton, VCU, these programs traditionally have been able to thrive and develop players really well. I mean, like Saxon, Marshallonis are very, very good players, and they were able to keep them. And Dayton was able to bring in down transfers like Posh Alexander and Zed Key. Those are really good players for the A10 level, and I think you're going to see. I mean, I have Dayton winning the A10. I believe in them and what Grant's done. Again, 135 wins over the last 6 seasons. That's really impressive at the mid-major level. And for him to still continue to build his roster, keep Malachi Smith there. Going forward, maybe it changes, but they've been able to do it this offseason. And again, VCU was going to lose its best player to the Big East until he decided to come back, and they still have enough around him. In fact, Shulga is going to try and he's potentially in line to be the A10 player of the year again. If he does that, VCU hasn't had a guy do that since Travion Graham back in 2014, 2015. If you want to remember some dudes, Travion Graham was the last time VCU had back-to-back, not players of the year, back-to-back first-team players in the A10. It's been that long since VCU had the same guy be a first-teamer in consecutive seasons. Shulga's got a great chance to do it. So, so we wait and see on that. Let's get to the bottom half. Again, these are the top 10 teams. All of them rank in the top 80 at the 3 most popular and well-referenced predictive metrics out there. KenPom, Torvik, and Evan Mia. Number 5, how about this? Grand Canyon, Bryce Drew. Bryce does care. 45th at Evan Mia, 53rd at Torvik, 54th at KenPom. Coming off that, speaking of St. Mary's, Grand Canyon upset St. Mary's in the first round of last year's tournament, and Grand Canyon, as of today, is scheduled to join the WCC next season, although the Mountain West has been heavily courting Grand Canyon to join its league. We wait and see on all that. They bring 4 starters back, led by Tyon Grant Foster, who easily made our list of the top 101 players in the country. He averaged 20 points and 6 rebounds per game. That could inflate all the more. They've got a TCU transfer, Jacoby Coles, who is a 42% three-point shooter in addition to everyone they have back. Grand Canyon, a power out of the whack. And I agree. I had Grand Canyon a year ago in my top 70, and then I put them in well inside the top 60 this season. Then how about this was a bit surprising to me. Number 7 is New Mexico. So New Mexico on average is the highest rated team out of the Mountain West. 52nd at Evan Mia, 56 at Torvik, and 62nd at KenPom. But what's interesting here is that they lost legit dudes. Jalen House, Jamal Mashburn Jr., J.T. Toppin, all gone. Donovan Dent is back. Nelly Jr. Joseph, a key big man, is back, but I would sell on the idea that Richard Pitino is going to have the best team in the Mountain West. But this is a lot of respect given to a team that was in a conference that had 6 bids. We'll get to that before the show's out. New Mexico narrowly rates ahead of Boise State, 45th at KenPom. So Boise State is the highest singularly rated team in the metrics of any Mountain West team, but on average, it doesn't beat out New Mexico. It's 67 at Torvik, 78th at Evan Mia, 19th at Norlander. Oh, by the way, heading in, they've got a point guard, Alvaro Cardenas, who I think is going to be tremendous, a San Jose State transfer. You've got Tyson Deeganhart, a 6'8" senior back. He's going to be key. I noted this in my Best of the Rest written preview, which I think you can read. We'll put it in the description of this podcast there. Deeganhart had a 126.8 offensive rating last season. It was the best in the country for anyone who played at least 80% of their team's minutes. So not only is he good, but he's extremely durable, great stamina, and very efficient for the amount of minutes he plays. They have also got Omar Stanley back as Boise State, who was a second teamer in the Mountain West. Then it's San Diego State and then Nevada. So we look through 5 through 9 on this list. It's all Mountain West programs, which makes a lot of sense. Now, SDSU, 48th at KenPom, 70th at Mia, 77 at Torvik, lost a lot as well. Jaden Ledee, Lamont Butler, Micah Parrish, Darian Trammell, they're all gone. They get Reese Waters back. Miles Bird's there. Yeah, your cousin, yeah, or your nephew, whatever Micah Parrish is.
That's my little cousin, Micah.
Nick Boyd comes in from FAU. I actually think he's a really good culture fit. I would lean on San Diego State. They're 9th here. I would trust Dutch and say San Diego State's going to probably find a way to be one of the, 6 best teams outside the power conference structure. They're 9th here on average, but I would, even with the amount of guys they lost, and they lost a lot, it'll be interesting to see. Nevada is 9th, 60th at Torvik, 62nd at Evan Mia, 73rd at KenPom. They have 3 big front court players back. There's some to be determined establishment in the backcourt there, but I think Nevada is well positioned to be in the NCAA tournament conversation as well there. So I might have even counted that wrong there. So we had Grand Canyon 6, New Mexico 7, Boise 8, San Diego State 9, Nevada 10. Any thoughts on any of those teams? Those are the only 10 teams that rank in the top 80 of the 3 predictive metrics heading into the season.
Well, Brian Dutcher has only missed the NCAA tournament once ever as a head coach. He has never finished outside of the top 5 of the Mountain West. He's won it, I believe, 3 different times. I'm just going to trust him. You're right. They lost a lot. Most notably, or at least among the notables, my little cousin, Micah Parrish.
Well, Jaden Ledee might be the most notable, but on that,
that's why I corrected myself.
Yeah, well, and quickly on that point, then take it away. Here's remember, Ledee was one of the best players in the country last season, and we thought that he'd be a good player, but that program has a way of really having guys step up into humongous roles, and we wait and see if that'll be Bird or if it'll be Waters or if it'll be anyone else there. So keep that in mind. But yes, your little Cuzzo being gone there is obviously a big thing to overcome.
It's not great. I didn't advise it. I didn't object. Once I saw Jake Diebler start Diebler people, I was like, I get it. I understand. But that's it. I'm going to trust San Diego State. Brian's rarely not been good. That building going to get you 3 or 4 wins a year. I trust the building. I trust the coach. I'm less certain about the roster, but I trust the building and I trust.
How many buildings you trust as much as you trust San Diego State's home venue?
I trust Allen Fieldhouse. Yeah. I trust the Kennel.
Obviously, Pinnacle Bank.
I mean, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
I trust
Viejas Arena might top the list, though. So, yeah.
I
mean,
trust,
the Clippers modeled their building after Viejas. If you're going to trust a building, you got to trust Viejas. What can I tell you?
I don't walk around every day just trusting buildings blindly. That's not the way I live my life. All right. That's not the way I live my life. Not this close to an election. It's not the way I live my life. But in this case, I'm going to trust the building. I don't mind saying
GP running for president and the slogan is "You can trust these buildings."
Hey, I don't know if you've been paying attention. There's worse slogans out there.
I'm aware.
I don't know if you've been paying attention, but there's worse slogans out there.
How can you not?
What a wild world we're living in,
That's what they say, GP. That's what they say.
Woo.
Yeah.
Woo.
Any other thoughts on any other Mountain West teams?
No,
that'll be it. Well, we got more to talk about. Listen, there's listen. There are 280 teams not in the high major structure. We're gonna get to all of them after this break. Nada, can I get a word from our partners, please?
Saturday, CBS Sports with 2 big games. First, undefeated Army looks to ground rival Air Force. Then it's big time. Number 1 Oregon takes on defending champs Michigan. Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, Norlander. We've been through most of the best of the rest.
Well, we've been through some, not most. We got more to get through.
Well, it depends on how long of a list you make the rest. If it's a short best of the rest list, then we've been through most of it. If you're going to try to take this to number 317, then we got a trip ahead of us.
We'll get out of here before that. There are 4 more teams that are in 2 of the 3 top 80 of Ken Pom, Evan Mia, and Torvik. They are McNeese, Utah State, Colorado State, and Princeton. So we have 2 more Mountain West teams, plus McNeese with Will Wade, and then Princeton, who's got a lot of promise there. McNeese is 65th at Torvik, 73rd at Evan Mia. They have Will Wade still running things there, and if you haven't seen, they really lean into the Bayou Bandit thing. They got a promo for their season, and Will Wade's he's got the mask or the bandana over his mouth. It's ridiculous, and I love it. I truly do. This team was a 13 seed last season, or it was a 12 last season, and could well be another 31 team again. Will Wade is dominating there. We talked about whether Memphis could be up for a job change depending on how Penny goes there. Will Wade will probably be among the obvious candidates to be in the mix there. So keep an eye on McNeese.
There's nobody ever been built better to be the Memphis coach than Will Wade.
That would be certainly something there. Well respected and rightfully so. They will run over the Southland. Utah State is the only team we're talking about on this pod that is not in my preseason top 101. Jared Calhoun is now coaching there. He was at Youngstown State for 7 seasons. The job has been pretty good for the majority of the past, 3-4 decades there. Really, with the exception of only one coach, everyone has done well there. They did lose a lot, but 72nd at Ken Palm, 79 at Torvik. I'm a wait and see on Utah State, but nonetheless, they did rank top 80 in 2 of the 3 metrics there. Colorado State is 76 at Ken Palm, 80th at Torvik. Isaiah Stevens is gone. He's replaced by Northern Iowa transfer Bowen Bourne. Nick Clifford is still there, a very, very good 6'5" wing, and he'll be one of the best players in the Mountain West. Jalen Lake also a name to know at Colorado State. We'll see. Probably an NIT team to me. Nico Medved, a good coach, though. Don't sleep on him too much.
No, you got beef with him.
I know, exactly. Here we go. Yeah, they're terrible. He's awful. Princeton, 77 at Ken Palm, 80th at Evan Mia, just breaking through that barrier there. The Tigers were 24-3 last season and then lost their final 2 games. I was there in Manhattan when they got beat by Brown, which was a stunning loss in the Ivy semis there. But they do bring back, how about this? Princeton, believe it. They've got Caden Pierce, the Ivy Player of the Year, and Xavier Lee, who was like a fringe NBA draft prospect. I think they've got, depends on how they want to run their offense, and Mitch Henderson, their coach, decides to do this. If he wanted to and allowed them to, they could combine to average more than 40 a night. They are one of the best duos in the country, and they're both on our preseason top 101 list, which is the first time that's ever happened. We've never had 2 players from an Ivy League program crack our preseason top 101. That's exactly what happened at Princeton there. So they are a very good team. They could potentially be, I guess, a 5-loss or better team again this season, but keep an eye on them. I've got them in the 70s as well. I think they've got a really good shot, and I look forward to seeing them in person this season.
Yeah, on Princeton, and I got to see them a couple of years ago in the Veterans Classic, and I'll be there next Friday night in Annapolis, doubleheader. Looking forward. It's always just a beautiful time being on that campus. But I got to see Princeton up close, and if I remember correctly, they lost. It was a bad. There was a bad no call, maybe at the whistle or something. But they went on. My point is, they not only won 24 games last season, they've won at least 23 3 straight years. Like, they've consistently been good, and they're expected to be that way again. Real quick before we get aggregated on Will Wade, I do think he would be an obvious candidate for Memphis if that job opened. I also think he's going to be good again this year, and then he'll probably get a better offer than the Memphis job.
Possible. Yeah. The will an SEC job open, and we'll go back to the SEC.
Yeah, because like if you leave McNeese at this point for Memphis, and I know like Memphis is historically a strong job, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they like Memphis before it hired Penny went out and hired a Big 12 coach, right? So you can do that at Memphis, but in this time, you would be asking Will to leave a 1-bid league for a 1-bid league. And I think I think
you'd be asking him to. I know, but to more fairly depict that, you'd be asking him to leave a low major for, I think, what still can be fairly described. I think the American should be a multi-bid league, but I understand what you're saying. It's definitely 2 jumps up from his current job.
Yeah, maybe, but I think more often than not, the American will be a 1-bid league in its current form. More often than not always, but more often than not. Obviously, Memphis is a better job than McNeese. I'm not trying to like if you are at if you're at McNeese and Memphis offers you and you have no better offer, you take the Memphis job. Obviously, I just think that he'll probably have an offer from one of the Power 5 conferences. I think one of the Power 5 conferences, one of those jobs will open, and one of them will be offered to Will Wade, and that's where he'll be coaching a year from today. That's what I would assume.
I think that's fair. Here are 5 more teams to know. Just 5 teams I like, 5 teams that I think have a good chance to be in the tournament or make some noise. Bradley is probably going to be the Valley favorite here. They've got a 5'8" water bug named Duke Dean, who's a really good point guard. Indiana State and Drake both the coaching changes, so this is the 10th season of Ryan Wardle. Bradley should be able to make some noise. If not, then maybe Northern Iowa and the Valley. UAB, speaking of the American, they're the preseason pick. Not as highly ranked by the metrics heading in, but they've got players. And Andy Kennedy's another coach. Like, his name could certainly pop onto some lists here if they play as expected. I would anticipate that. Yaxel, Landeborg, and Butta Johnson are a couple of names to know there. I love the fact that there's just it's just a great thing for college hoops that a dude named Yaxel and a dude named Butta are teammates, and they should be, if not in the NCAA tournament, very close. UAB's got a really good team, and spoiling it a little bit here, but I actually think the American's going to be a 2-bid league this year. I think it'll get multiple bids, and I think UAB is going to break through. In the MAC, I pick Ohio. Jeff Bowles has quietly done a pretty damn good job. His former player, we mentioned this a couple times this offseason, but Mark Sears not only started his career at Ohio, but started his career behind Jason Preston, who was an NBA pick. And then you look up, and I think Mark Sears enters this season as the best player and most valuable in college basketball. And even if he's not that, he's indisputably one of the 5 best players in the sport. Began his career and was recruited by Jeff Bowles and his staff there. Currently, right now, they've got a point guard named Sharif Mitchell. He's good. AJ Clayton hit 40% of his threes. I like Ohio to come out of what should be a really good race in the MAC and represent that league in the NCAA tournament. And then 2 more. Loyola Chicago. I was at one of their practices recently when we went to Chicago for Big Ten Media Day there. Des Watson is a really good guard. Miles Rubin is a 6'10" sophomore who could grow into one of the, I don't know, GP, like 5 to 7 best defensive bigs in the country by the end of the season. I think Loyola Chicago is going to be a top 3 team in the A-10, and as a result, be in the bubble conversation when we get to the first week of March. And then a team that I think will be a Cinderella candidate if all goes well. We mentioned them on the Bama summer shoot-around because Alabama was one of only 2 teams to agree to play this team, and that's Arkansas State. The Red Wolves, they're going to be the top team in the Sun Belt now that James Madison's undergoing a coaching change. Brian Hodgson is in year 2. He's a former NATO's assistant, and they won 20-plus games last season. It was only the second time that they had ever it was their second 20-win season since 1998. Keep an eye on Arkansas State. They should be pretty good overall, and certainly a Cinderella candidate.
Yeah, Brian's like 1 conference championship away from getting the.
That's correct. He is
$3 million a year job,
without a doubt. If Arkansas State is a 13 seed and rolls through its schedule, and even if it's not competitive in its first round game, he is also going to be a name that's up to get a
because then he'll check every box. It'll be like he's been winning at the mid-major level, and he's like was an assistant right-hand man for a guy who is considered one of the best coaches in the country. So like the trajectory is heading the right direction there. Circling back to the AAC, you're right. UAB was the coach's pick in the official preseason poll. It is interesting. Memphis is like 30 or 40 spots higher than UAB in the computers across the board. And I don't know if that happened in literally any other league in the country where there is one team 30 or 40 spots ahead of every other team in the league, and yet that team was not picked to win its league.
And I think Memphis will be better than UAB, but I think both of those teams will be NCAA tournament worthy. And they've got just a lot of undeniable talent there. It's going to be intriguing to know. You know what, Nada? Let's take one more break. I want to touch on a few players to know on teams that we haven't mentioned. So guys that could be a star level at the mid-major level, and then also want to get into some coaches in some new spots that are of note. And then we're going to try and predict how many at-large bids come from conferences outside the high major. So that's coming up after the break. But Nada, one more word from those partners, please.
It's a team almost too good to be true.
You guys ain't ready for us.
Kick your game day off right as the Tops team tackles all the biggest headlines around the league.
Who's got 2 thumbs and loves this next segment?
Sunday mornings on CBS Sports Network.
All right.
I don't know if you've been paying attention, but there's worse campaign slogans out there these days. I don't know if you've seen them, but they're out there. Hey, What happened to Robbie Avila?
Is it Avila or Avila?
Avila.
Okay. Here are the players to know. Players to know outside the high major structure. By far, the biggest name is Robbie Avila. He is now at St. Louis with Josh Schertz, who we'll get to in just a second there. My question for you is, what is your favorite Robbie Avila nickname? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? Kareem, not Kareem. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Milk Chamberlain, or Steph Blurry? I think there are a couple more, but I think those are the 3 most common.
I'm going to go with B.
You like Milk? That's my least favorite. He doesn't resemble Milk Chamberlain. I don't know.
He looks just like Will Chamberlain.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Fair to assume Robbie's one of us?
Oh, I hope so. I hope so.
That would be devastating if it wasn't the case. Wilt Chamberlain.
Can you imagine
Very
with those?
much.
Can you
Actually,
imagine with
might be chairman of the board.
Man, Wilt Chamberlain, he was a little bit too much of us. He might have took it too far. Can you imagine?
Man.
Robbie got them goggles on, buddy. I bet that's a scene.
All right. That's good times. 17.4 points, 6.6 boards, 4.1 assists, and 39% from three-point range for Avila last season. Became obviously a cult hero in college hoops, and now gets to ball up at St. Louis.
That's an A block. That's an A block in the A10 tip-off show.
No doubt.
Man, we lost Deron Holmes. We needed this.
Yes.
We needed this. A block, A10 tip-off show. I can't wait to do it 5 different times.
Yeah. He is St. Louis, I think, is going to be a top 3, top 4 team. I think in the A10, they've got a lot of expectation there. Speaking of the A10, 2 guys to know, Eric Reynolds II and Xavier Brown at St. Joe's. This is the best St. Joe's backcourt since 2 dudes named Jameer Nelson and Delonte West. Reynolds has put up 17 plus per game the past 2 seasons. Brown is a sophomore. He is the team's best pro prospect. He averaged almost 13 points, 4 boards, 3.3 assists, and almost 2 steals, and was a 40.4% three-point shooter. One A10 coach recently told me he actually thinks Xavier Brown is the best player in the whole damn league. St. Joe's may or may not be NCAA tournament worthy. Expectations are really high there, to the point where I think some diehard St. Joe's fans are of the belief that it is their team and not Villanova that will be the best in the city. Certainly intriguing and one to watch there. But we've been waiting on the Hawks to matter for a good while here since Phil Martelli left, and this has the potential to be that. If St. Joe's isn't the first or second best team, they should be third or fourth. Again, we wait and see under Billy Lang. Cedric Coward out of Washington State, not a well-known name, but he did go through the pre-draft process, actually got some real buzz. He's following his coach, David Riley, who was plucked from Eastern Washington to Washington State. Really one of the better mid-major draft prospects out there, and was tremendously efficient for a guy that was a wing player there. So I don't know how good or not Washington State will be, but they will have draft heads are very aware of Coward and how good of a player he is. The same is true of Deaton Thomas at UNLV, GP. You're obviously extremely aware of him with all the Mountain West stuff on CBS Sports Network. He was the co-rookie of the year in the league, averaged 13.6 points, 5.1 assists. Keep an eye out. I think it is maybe a little bit of a hot season out there for Kruger, but he's got one of the better sophomore mid majors in the players in the country. Really, really good. Keep an eye on him. Trying to give you guys on teams that we didn't mention. If you're curious, NCAA has the highest returning scorer in the sport at the mid-major level. Landon Glasper averaged 21 points last season as a sophomore. That was 21st best in the country. No one in the mid-majors averaged more points and returned to that level in the nation than Glasper. Good on him returning to NCAA. And then 2 more here. Javon Porter, he averaged 16 points at Pepperdine. He's now at LMU. Actually, Isaac Trotter, who does work with us at CBS Sports and then obviously has done good work for 247 for a while, he ranked Porter among the 70 or so best transfers in the country. So maybe he winds up being a game breaker in the WCC. And then one to keep an eye on, to me, is Baba Miller, who goes from Florida State to FAU. We are to be determined on FAU, and we'll get to them in just a second as well. But Miller really could be a menace by moving a level down. One of those down transfers that didn't get a lot of attention, and I get that, but I actually think that's a really, really good adjustment for him and is big for FAU and could be key to them keeping pace in the American there. Let's get to 7 notable hirings of the offseason. GP, you can kick it off because I think, while there are 2 headliners from a track record standpoint, there was one hiring at the mid-major level that far outpaced anyone else.
In what way?
In Chris Mack going to
Charleston. Certainly he's the biggest
one.
name.
Yeah.
That's a huge get. I honestly thought when Chris got back in that, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful to Charleston. I understand, like, that's an incredible basketball program, an amazing city, like unbelievable community. Like I've vacationed there. Like, we get on a flight to go there to spend time. It's awesome. I thought Chris's next job after Louisville would be a bigger job in a bigger league, but he's also somebody who, values, he's got interest outside of, he's a real husband and a real father, and everybody I know who's ever spent time in Charleston loves it there, and I'm sure that factored into his decision. But that's a great gift for Charleston, and I suspect, he'll take that program as far as you can take it.
Yeah, no doubt. Mac was involved at Vanderbilt heavily. A little bit of a weird search, and then it goes the way it goes. They hired the James Madison coach and Mark Byington, and now Mac goes to Charleston, and Charleston will compete with Towson, UNCW, and Hofstra in the CAA. Should be actually a pretty good league this year and a really good race. It is. I have Towson winning the league, but it would surprise zero human beings if Mac got to Charleston and immediately won that league in year one. He's the most notable of all, and that's just a huge get. It also speaks to the value of that job, and GP just laid a lot of that out. The second most notable hiring of the cycle, I can't wait to see how this goes. I just don't know how it's going to go. Has never coached in college basketball. His brother is a longtime assistant. His father obviously was a lifelong coach. Doug Gottlieb is going to coach Green Bay, and we will see. I honestly, GP, I don't know. Maybe he'll be incredible, and we're looking in 2 years, and he's coaching at a league above, or maybe this is just not going to work whatsoever, and he's out of the game within 2 to 3 seasons. I honestly, I have no clue. If nothing else, it is interesting and more attention on the Horizon League, which is obviously has Oakland, which is coming off a really good run in March when they upset Kentucky. We talked about this when it broke back in May, but let's just circle back real quick here. Doug Gottlieb to Green Bay. Any thoughts on how you think this will go, or if it was a good decision on behalf of them? Because remember, Gottlieb is maintaining his national radio gig, and so you and I both follow him on social media. Like he's kind of kept on as he's always been there, and is going to try and do something that basically we've never seen before.
Right. I'm too old to still be saying things like there's no way something will work, because there's always a way something will work. I've been wrong enough to know that if you start standing up on the day somebody's hired and saying this is a crazy hire and there's no chance it'll work, you're going to wind up on old takes exposed. Like we've all been wrong before, so I stopped doing it. And I can always weigh in, like, is this what I would have done, or is this not what I would have done? But the idea that I would stand up and say there's no way Doug Gottlieb's going to be a successful college basketball coach, that's crazy to me. I mean, I know when JJ Redick got hired with like no coaching experience, people were standing up and saying that, and we'll see how it goes, but they're off to a 3-1 start. They look like a competent basketball team in Los Angeles with the Lakers. So we'll see. Here's what I actually think. We won't even notice. We won't even know. Like it'll be a Wednesday in January, and I'll say, hey, how's Green Bay doing? And you'll go, let me check. It's just going to happen off of the radar unless there's like some controversy
or unless it goes really good or really bad.
Right. It's just going to be something that happens, it'll feel like Damon Stoudemire coaching in the West Coast Conference. It'll be like, yeah, I know him. Well, how's his team? I don't know. It'll be one of those deals. And I don't love, like, if I were Green Bay, I don't know that I would have been completely comfortable with him doing a radio show every day and running my basketball program. Like, just speaking candidly, that would have been something that I wouldn't have been in love with. I don't know that it would have been a deal breaker, but I wouldn't have loved it. But we'll see how it goes. He's obviously been doing both for several months now. But I think it'll mostly be something that, unless you're right, unless it goes really well or really badly, it'll just mostly happen off of our radar.
Yeah, I'm fascinated on how he gets that done. Like, I think he's like in the late afternoons, like that bumps up into like shoot arounds or pregame meals. I don't know, whatever. Listen, he's going to do it. Interested to see how it goes. And to me, that was the second most notable to Mac. Let me run down the other 5, and then you can give quick thoughts. Josh Hurst to St. Louis, from 11 wins to 23 to 32 in 3 years at Indiana State. Indiana State would have been in the NCAA tournament had there not been 5-6 bid thieves And in fact, I think there's an alternate universe where if that happens and Indiana State makes the tournament, I actually think Schertz is the coach at Louisville instead. But as I wrote in my Best of the Rest preview, this actually feels like the proper jump for him and a really good fit. St. Louis is predicted to be, in his first season, one of the 5 best teams in the A10. That's immediate lofty praise. He was able to bring Isaiah Swope alongside of Milt Chamberlain. So intrigued to see what the Billikens can do there. John Jacobs to FAU. He's a Baylor assistant. He actually beat out some sitting head coaches for this job. Now there is some risk in that he's never run a program. They're now in the American. They lose Dusty May. There's some momentum that's stymied a little bit, and there was massive roster change. FAU is ranked 104th at KenPom heading into the season. Konzo Martin back to Missouri State is certainly notable. He was there from 2008 to 2011. That was his first head coaching gig. He then went on to Tennessee, Cal, and Missouri. He took the past 2 seasons off. Mo State hasn't made the tournament since 1999. I think there's a chance that can turn out to be a pretty awesome story. Martin's a good coach, and going back to this level, it's cool that both the school and Martin thought that this was the right step to take. I'm not saying he's going to get him to the tournament or anything, but I'd be surprised if not, at minimum, he was there for a half decade at Missouri State, was a competent team in the Valley. And then 2 more. Ben McCollum is now the coach at Drake. He's notable because he is a 4-time national championship coach at the D2 level with Northwest Missouri State. He won 394 games and only lost 91 of them at that level. He turned down multiple mid-major offers in recent seasons, and I don't know why he chose Drake when he turned down some other jobs, some that you could easily argue were better. Nonetheless, he is there and carries a very good reputation for being just a whip-smart X&O guy. Intrigued to see how it goes there. And then if you want a big name, and oh, by the way, Jerry McNamara is now the coach at Siena. I spent nearly a decade, obviously, on staff at Syracuse. Now he gets his shot in the MAC. That's pretty cool. I think for guys like you and me, GP, who were, in our early 20s, well, I was, when Syracuse won the title. And obviously, McNamara spent 4 years there, but he was a freshman on that title-winning team. To now see him of the age and point in his life where he is running a program it's kind of wild, but Siena, that fan base is among the most invested at the low major level that folks across country might not fully understand, but they fired their previous coach, Carm Massariello, who had done not a great job, but not an awful job to try and get themselves back on the right track in that league. And so Jerry to Siena, certainly among the most notable. Any thoughts on any of those dudes?
I like having Konzo just back in the sport. He has taken 3 schools to the NCAA tournament: Tennessee, Cal, and Missouri, like 3 power conference schools to the NCAA tournament. He also coached at Missouri State previously. That's the one school he's been at that he didn't take to the tournament. So he's got a chance now to take a 4th school to the NCAA tournament. I suspect he'll do it someday. Like Gottlieb is the biggest name, I guess, among the former college players, just because of his media career. But like Jerry McNamara is like a college basketball star. I was 26 years old when he won a national championship. He won a national. I was a father for a few weeks when Jerry McNamara won his first championship. How about that? Okay. How about that? That suggests I was a us when Jerry McNamara was on his way to a national championship at Syracuse. I was busy being a us.
All right, there you go. Congrats on that. 21 years later. Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Let's wrap on this. How many non-Big 5 programs earn at-large bids this season? Trivia time.
Okay, good. Come on.
Although you might have researched this. How many?
I was going to ask you this.
How many were there last season?
Okay, the Mountain West had like 40. So
there you go. Start there.
Let's start there.
Yep.
I'm just guessing. I was actually going to ask you this question.
Yep.
How many last year? I'm going to say like 9.
I believe there were 8. There were 5 in the Mountain West.
Right.
Just an all-time year by the Mountain West, by the way.
It's unbelievable.
It was an amazing conference. Utah State was an 8. San Diego State was a 5. Nevada, Boise State, Colorado State were 10s. And then New Mexico, which I still think is outrageous, needed to win the league tournament even to get in the field. It would not have been in if it didn't win the league tournament. New Mexico was an 11, and that was not the 6th best team, nor did it have the 6th best resume in that conference. Whatever. The Mountain West got 6 last season, and then let's see, there was 1 out of the A10, right? Because Dayton got in. Let me double check this here. I think the A10 had 1. Yes, Duquesne was the auto bid, Dayton was the at large. And then you had 1 in the WCC because you had Gonzaga and then St. Mary's. And then wasn't there 1 in the American? I think there were 8. American would have sent, I'm checking right now, JP, sorry. I think that we had 8. American had, it had UAB as the auto bid and FAU as the at large. So there were 8 at large bids last season. I'm going to set the over under. I'm going to set the over under at 6.5.
I was going to say 6. So I think it goes down.
Here's why I don't think it goes down, GP. Headline from the middle of the offseason, the middle of summer, that I think is going to impact this in beneficial ways for mid-majors. Now, we do have mega conference expansion. You've got 4 leagues that are 16 or 18 teams. And how those resumes get parsed is going to be fascinating to me. But Torvik is now on the committee's team sheets, and the NCAA has actually built a wins above bubble metric that's going to be on the team sheets. Now, wins above bubble evaluates your resume versus what the average bubble team will do. This is considered as empirical of a data point as you could have to truly trying to see how strong a team is versus who they have scheduled. It does not have any bias against mid-majors in this regard. And I actually think that because of this, it's going to wind up helping, say, one team outside the power conference structure that maybe would have otherwise not squeaked in and made it to Dayton. I think that they're going to get there because of that. I'm going to say 8 again. So I'll go over, and I'll go over by 1.5. I wrote it down here. I think the Mountain West, I'll say 3 in the Mountain West this season. Okay. I'll say no, you know what? Yeah, no, I'll say 3 get in at large from the Mountain West. I'll say 2 in the A10. I'm big on the A10 this season, GP. I think the A10 is going to have a good season. So that's 5. 1 in the WCC, so it's either St. Mary's or Gonzaga. Give me 1 in the American. That gets me at 7. And then I just toss me in another league. Some team emerges, is really, really good, has 29 wins, doesn't win their auto bid, and they break through there. I'll lean in on the new metrics for the committee benefiting mid-majors, and I'll say if we have the same number, I'll say 8 at-larges outside. Because remember, now we have 1 fewer power conferences, but the Pac-12 is gone. Will all of the other big leagues eat up all those would-be bids that the Pac-12 would have, or will 1 or 2 get dispersed from mid-majors? I'll lean toward the latter, so give me 8. You've got 6.
Yeah, and it'll probably be right in the middle of it. 7. I'll go 7 now.
You're probably right. So that's the best of the rest. We didn't get through all 280 or so teams, but that's disappointing. That's disappointing. It's our initial scan. I see some love for High Point in the chat. High Point's also a very, very good team. Should be quality of the Big South. Alan Huss did a good job. And obviously, as these teams make noise, get upsets, we'll talk about them as the season goes along. We are less than 1 week until the start of the season. Only 1 or 2 more shows. Parrish is flexing on the pod right now. If you're watching on YouTube, you're welcome, I guess. We'll see what news comes up, but I think we're going to do a mailbag. And then we got to do our show where we have our Final Four predictions and our preseason awards, run through all America teams. We'll get all that done as we gear up for next Monday. I tell you, we cannot wait. Next week, big week. The entire nation waits. Has been waiting for months and months for this. And by that, I mean Gonzaga Baylor on Monday night.
And you should remind people, or I could, we're also taking the podcast back to CBS Sports Network on Monday. That's a fact, right?
That is correct. Yeah, that's the plan.
That's the plan. That's a fact.
So we're going to have, as much as they'll have us, we're going to have the show on TV again this season, I think, with more exposure than ever. So typical pods as normal here on YouTube and in the feed, but those shows as well will get dipped into the feed. So we got plenty coming for you.
Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle, legend. Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching and listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. There's more of us than there are of them. That should be reflected in the comments. So do that. We'll talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.